Hello and welcome to the solution for the Plotly homework, Belly Button Biodiversity. In this assignment, you will build an interactive dashboard to explore the Belly Button Diversity data set. You have a couple of steps in this activity. Step one is to create an interactive chart on your dashboard. First, you'll create a pie chart that uses the data from the sample route, and this will display the top 10 samples. You also create a bubble chart that uses the data from this route. You need to display the sample metadata from the route. Route is selected, so you'll get each key value pair from the metadata JSON object and populate that somewhere on your page. You'll need to make sure that you can update all the plots when a new sample is selected. And finally, you can create any layout you want with your dashboard, but you can use starter code that's been given to you. This is where your metadata will be populated from the JSON object when a new sample is selected. Step two involves deploying to Heroku. Before you deploy, make sure your Flask app is working on your local machine and all the data is being rendered according to the instructions. You have an advanced challenge assignment. This is optional. This will be required to make a frequency gauge for the belly button washing frequency, and it should go to the right of the pie chart up here. As I mentioned, make sure that your API starter code is serving all the data needed for your plots, and make sure you visit each route on your browser and that data is populated. Make sure you use console log inside your JavaScript code to see what your data looks like on the browser. So you've been given some starter code, so that's your index.html file. You also have a requirements.txt file that's already been given to you. You have your app.py file that's been given to you that is going to have all your routes. This is your home route on your local machine, the names route, the metadata route that when you pass a sample in here, it'll select all the data, the metadata from that. And then you also have your samples route. And when you select a sample, it's going to return the O2U IDs, sample values, and labels. And what you need to do is complete these functions, the build metadata function and the build charts function, and the rest is all starter code that's been given to you. And for the extra credit, this is where you're going to pass in your build gauge function and the washing frequency of the data. Let's work on the function build metadata. So first we need to complete this by using d3JSON to fetch the metadata for a sample. So here I've written d3.json. I am getting the route metadata, and in this route, if I pass the sample in that route, it's going to get all the data for that sample. And the route is shown here. And then we're going to use the variable panel to select the sample metadata ID, and that is shown here on your index.html file. And then we're going to clear any existing data from the HTML file. Next, we're going to use object.entries to add each key and value pair to the panel. I've used object.entries to get the key value pairs from the data that's we selected from our sample, and we're going to append to an H6 element to the panel, and we're going to append the key and value pair in that panel body. I've also console logged those key value pairs as well. So if we look at our index.html file, this is our code for our panel body, and we're going to append the H6 element inside this. Next, we're going to finish the function build charts. So we need to use d3JSON to fetch the sample data for our plots and build a bubble chart and build a pie chart. Here I've used d3JSON. I'm selecting the route samples. When a sample is selected, I'm going to get the data from that sample. If we look at our app.py file, and that would be down here, and I'm going to return all of this data here on the web page. So I'm setting the constant O2U IDs to that data, getting the O2U ID from that, the O2U label, getting that from the data and the sample values as well. And I'm console logging all three of those constant variables. Then I'm building the bubble chart. So first I want to get the bubble layout, setting the margins. The hover mode will be closest and x-axis will be O2U ID. Then I select the variable bubble data where I pass in the x and y values as well as the text. So the x values will be the O2U IDs. The sample values will be on the y-axis. The labels will be text on those bubbles. We're going to select markers as our mode, and the size of those markers will be based on the values of our sample values. The color will be based on the O2U IDs with the color scale given as Earth, and you can use a different color scale if you'd like. Then finally, I do a plotly.plot where I select the bubble ID element, which is shown here on your index.html page, and then pass in the bubble data and the bubble layout. Next, we need to build the pie chart. So here I've built the pie chart. I passed in the variable pie data. Here I'm getting the values and the labels. The values will be the sample values. We're getting the top 10, so we're using slice for all three of these. For the labels, the OTO IDs, the hover text will be the labels, and then the type of chart will be pie. The layout shown here with the margins using plotly.plot. I'm getting the pie ID element shown here, and then passing in the pie data as well as the pie layout. And the rest is starter code that's given to you, so we can save this. Then we can go to the app.py file and run this in our terminal. Now I can go to my local host, and there's the data. The default is set for 940, so this is a sample metadata that needs to be shown on your dashboard. Here's the pie chart showing all the metadata, the bubble chart showing also all the metadata here. If I select a new sample, all that should change accordingly. If I do inspect, go to console, and this is the first sample 940 that I selected. This is the second one 948. So the data is being passed on into the console. Then we need to check our routes. The first route is names, and so there's all the names. Then I pass in metadata, sample 940, and that shows the first sample. The next route is samples. Select 940. That's going to give me the key O2U IDs and all the values for that, and then key O2U labels and all the values for those labels, and then the key sample values and all the values for those samples. So it looks like everything is working. Now we can deploy to Heroku. These are the files that need to be in the same folder as the app.py file, so the same folder structure. You need the requirements.txt file. You already have that. That's been given to you. This contains all the dependencies that are used in the application. If you don't have it, then this is the code that you would run to create that file. So we need the proc file, which we'll create. This is the code that will go in the proc file. We'll also create a run.sh file. This is the code that will go in that file. And then you need a runtime.txt file. And this is the code that's going to go into that file. I'm going to create these files on terminal. So those three files are created, and I've also included the extension for those files, and now I'm going to add the code to those files. So I've added the code to the proc file. This is web gunicorn app. And so we're looking for the app.py file in the same folder structure, and we're running the app. If this proc file was outside of the folder where your app.py file is, then you would have to type in that folder where the app.py file is. So in this case, it would be Belly Button Biodiversity in front of this. With the run.sh file, this shell script, allows the Heroku application to run the app.py file. This would be the same as typing Python app.py in the terminal to run the app.py file. Again, if this file was outside of the folder where your app.py file is, you would have to type in the folder where that app.py file is. And the runtime.txt file is just going to tell Heroku that you're running the Python as your main programming language. In the requirements.txt file, you don't have one of the dependencies that you need to add. So it's going to be the Gunicorn. So I've typed in the Gunicorn version 19.7.1, and I'm going to save that file. So now we can run that Gunicorn in the proc file. So now we're ready to deploy to Heroku. I'm going to create a new app on Heroku, and I'm just selecting create a new app. Heroku has created a random app name, and now I'm going to use the following instructions to deploy our app onto Heroku. And now you have your link to your app. You can either copy this and paste it. You can do Heroku open, and that will open it, or you can go to your settings on your Heroku web page, and then you can click, and there's our Belly Button dashboard, and it's working as expected. Everything changes, and that is a solution for the Belly Button Biodiversity homework with Heroku deployment.